Welcome back everyone to the channel where we dive into the fascinating world of rare coins, unbelievable values, and the hidden treasures that could be sitting right inside your change jar. And today we are going to explore one of the most jaw-dropping and legendary examples in coin collecting history, the 1954 Lincoln Wheat Penny that has shocked collectors, historians, and even seasoned numismatists with its unimaginable value, reaching a staggering $500 million because of the rare errors, incredible minting mistakes, and unique anomalies that make it unlike anything else. And what makes this story even more exciting is that this isn't just a simple 1-cent piece. It is a gateway into the mysteries of the mint, the quirks of production, and the rare possibilities that happen when tiny changes in metal, die strikes, and minting conditions align to create a coin that becomes one of the rarest and most valuable pieces in American history. And as we welcome all of you back to this exciting journey, we invite you to imagine the possibilities of finding something as small and unassuming as a penny that could literally be worth more than some of the most famous paintings or luxury properties on Earth. Because the 1954 Wheat Penny with its multitude of errors and mistakes represents the peak of collectible coin value, and the stories surrounding it are both thrilling and inspiring for anyone interested in the world of coins, money, and hidden treasures. Now the first thing to understand about this coin is its origin. Minted in San Francisco in 1954, a time when the wheat reverse design was still in circulation. The coin itself should have been nothing unusual, but the specific circumstances of the dies used, the planches that were prepared, and the multiple striking problems that occurred during its production gave rise to some of the rarest and strangest combinations of errors we've ever seen. And that is why this 1-cent piece has been catapulted into legendary status, commanding a valuation of $500 million and creating buzz in every collector's circle imaginable. When we talk about errors that drive such astronomical values, we have to break down the possible mistakes that could exist, because the 1954 penny is not just about a simple off-strike or a weak strike. This coin is believed to have a mix of doubled dies, repunched mint marks, wrong planchette strikes, and even experimental metal compositions that should never have left the mint, creating a layered combination of features that makes every expert who sees it stop in their tracks. And if we imagine for a moment that this coin may have been struck on a leftover steel planchette from 1943 by mistake, or on a transitional bronze alloy that doesn't match the standard issue, we begin to understand why it holds such legendary status. The presence of die clashes where the obverse and reverse designs accidentally overlap without a planchette in between adds even more uniqueness. And when collectors look under magnification, they can see doubling in Lincoln's profile, extra impressions in the date, and anomalies in the wheat stalks on the reverse that all point to a chaotic and rare production history. And each one of these details piles on top of the other until you have a coin so special that it becomes nearly priceless. And yet the market has attached an incredible value of $500 million to this particular example because rarity and demand intersect in such a dramatic way. Imagine holding a coin like this in your hand, a coin that cost the mint just 1 cent to produce but now rivals the value of entire art collections and estates. And you begin to see why people become obsessed with searching through their change. Because what if the next coin you find carries one of these impossible combinations of errors? The thrill of the hunt is what drives so many collectors, and the 1954 penny is the ultimate treasure they dream about. Now one of the most fascinating aspects of this coin is the possibility of repunched mint marks, because in the 1950s the process of adding mint marks was done by hand with punches, and if the punch slipped or had to be reapplied, you could end up with doubled or even tripled mint marks. And on this 1954 the mint mark shows signs of being struck more than once, leaving a shadowed or doubled S that collectors immediately recognize as a rare and desirable trait. Combine that with doubling on the date where the numbers 1954 show ghost-like outlines and extra thickness, and suddenly you have a coin that no longer looks like an ordinary wheat penny, but rather a window into the human errors and mechanical imperfections of the minting process. And because mistakes like these were never supposed to leave the mint, finding one in circulation decades later makes it even more remarkable. Another layer to this coin's value lies in the speculation that a few 1954 cents were struck on leftover silver dime planches or foreign coin blanks, creating off-metal errors that are virtually unheard of. And when you take into account that most of these should have been caught and melted, the survival of even one example becomes monumental. Collectors are also intrigued by the stories that some 1954 pennies were struck with proof-like finishes even though they were not officially proofs, perhaps due to polished dies being used by mistake, creating reflective surfaces that contrast sharply with frosted devices. And when you combine that mirror-like quality with all the other errors, you end up with a coin that looks stunning to the naked eye and even more fascinating under magnification. Now imagine the bidding wars that erupt whenever a coin like this surfaces at auction. Major collectors, museums, and even private investors all scramble to own a piece of numismatic history. And with a valuation of $500 million, it's no wonder that this coin is often talked about in hushed tones and with reverence, because it's more than just a penny. It's a symbol of how chance, history, and human error can create something priceless. And when you really think about it, the reason people are so captivated by coins like the 1954s is because they combine mystery with possibility. Mystery in that we may never know exactly how the errors occurred or why this particular piece survived when others did not. And possibility in that anyone, no matter who they are, could in theory stumble upon such a coin in a collection, a coin roll, or a forgotten jar. And that dream of turning a penny into a fortune is what keeps the coin collecting world alive. But let's go deeper into the technical side of what makes the 1954s unique, because when experts study the die varieties, they see things like doubled dies where Lincoln's eye shows a second impression, where the motto "I in God we trust" seems to have shadowing, where the lettering on Liberty shows clear doubling, and all of these are textbook signs of a doubled die obverse. And on the reverse the wheat stalks show extra lines, the E pluribus unum has split serifs, and the rim itself is slightly misaligned, indicating a shifted die at the time of striking. And when you combine die clashes where parts of Lincoln's bust can be faintly seen in the reverse fields, you have multiple layers of errors interacting, each of which would be collectible on its own, but together they create something almost mythical, and this mythical nature is what allows it to command $500 million in value. Because rarity isn't just about how many coins exist, it's about how many features make them stand out. And the 1954s has more anomalies packed into it than almost any other coin known. Now some collectors also point out that the coloration and toning of this penny adds to its appeal, with a rainbow spectrum of hues dancing across its surface, suggesting unique chemical interactions during storage that enhance its eye appeal. And in the world of numismatics, eye appeal is a huge factor in value. A technically rare coin can be worth millions more if it also looks stunning to collectors, and the 1954s delivers on that front as well, shimmering under light and adding yet another dimension to its desirability. The coin tells a story not just of minting mistakes but of survival, traveling through decades, escaping melting pots, circulation, and the wear of time, and somehow retaining enough of its details and errors to be studied and marveled at today. And that journey adds an almost romantic quality to it, as if fate itself conspired to keep this penny alive so it could one day shock the world with its $500 million value. And when you think about how a tiny mistake at the San Francisco Mint in 1954 could ripple through history and create such a legend, it reminds us that even the smallest details can have enormous consequences. Now as we explore the implications of this coin, we can see why it inspires not just collectors but dreamers, because if a penny like this exists, then the possibility of other undiscovered treasures existing is very real, and that fuels the excitement of every treasure hunt, every coin search, every careful inspection of pocket change, and it is this thrill of discovery that keeps the hobby alive across generations. And in the case of the 1954s, it has cemented its place as the ultimate example of rarity, error, and value combined. So when people ask how a penny could possibly be worth $500 million, the answer lies in a combination of rarity, demand, error variety, eye appeal, survival, and the mythology that builds around such a piece. Because the more people talk about it, the more legendary it becomes, and the more legendary it becomes, the more its value climbs, feeding into a cycle that elevates this coin to heights never before imagined. And as we wrap this journey through the 1958 Wheat Penny coin, where we uncover the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins and hidden treasures that could be sitting unnoticed in your pocket change or tucked away in an old jar. And today we are diving into one of the most incredible discoveries that has ever shaken the coin collecting community, the legendary 1958 Lincoln Wheat Penny that has become the subject of awe, mystery, and intense demand because of its extraordinary errors and minting mistakes, a coin that by itself was worth just a cent when it was struck at the Denver Mint but is now valued at an astounding $350 million. And this is not simply because of age or design but because of a series of remarkable anomalies that transformed this coin into one of the most valuable pieces of numismatic history ever known. And as we welcome you into this thrilling exploration, imagine the excitement of realizing that something as small and seemingly ordinary as a penny could rival the worth of some of the most famous works of art or the most luxurious estates in the world, because the story of the 1958 Wheat Penny is about more than just metal. It is about how mistakes, accidents, and rare circumstances can create something truly priceless. And as collectors know, the Wheat Penny series already carries an aura of nostalgia and desirability since it represents the era of American coinage from 1909 to 1958. But the final year of the wheat design in 1958 is especially significant, and among those final strikes the Denver Mint produced a handful of coins so strange and so flawed that they became legends in their own right. And the rarest of them all is this extraordinary 1958 era penny that carries a half-dozen different mistakes layered into its design, each one adding to the staggering value that today places it at $350 million. Now, what exactly makes this penny so different and so outrageously valuable is a combination of doubled dies, misaligned strikes, off-metal planchet errors, repunched mint marks, and die clashes that together create an absolute masterpiece of imperfection. And when you understand that errors like these were never supposed to escape the mint, the fact that this coin even exists is something of a miracle. Let us first consider the double die obverse, which is one of the most sought-after errors in all of coin collecting because it happens when the hub imprints a doubled image onto the die, causing the struck coins to display strong doubling in the date, lettering, or even in Lincoln's profile. And the 1958 penny in question shows incredible doubling on the words "I and God we trust," "liberty," and especially in the numerals of the date, where the 1958 appears thick and shadowed as if struck twice but slightly offset, and this makes it stand out immediately to the naked eye. Then we also have the repunched mint mark. The D under Lincoln's bust is not cleanly struck but instead shows evidence of being punched more than once, leaving ghost-like outlines that are unmistakable under magnification. And because mint marks in the 1950s were applied by hand, this kind of error was possible, but extremely rare for it to pass quality control and end up in circulation. Now let's consider that some of these coins were also struck on transitional planchets, with rumors that a few may have been accidentally struck on leftover steel blanks from 1943 or on foreign coin stock that was mistakenly mixed into the Denver supply, creating off-metal errors that are almost unheard of for this date. And if such an error coin survived, it would immediately elevate its status to legendary levels. Then we must also think about die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving faint impressions of Lincoln's bust visible on the reverse fields around the wheat stalks, and faint traces of the reverse design bleeding onto the obverse background, giving the coin a ghostly, almost surreal look that collectors are fascinated by. And when you put all of these factors together, the doubled die, the repunched mint mark, the possibility of transitional off-metal strikes, the die clashes, and even slight misalignments in the rim and strike pressure, you end up with a coin that is not only unique but also historically important, because it represents the absolute peak of rarity, error, and desirability all at once, and collectors are willing to pay astronomical prices to own something so extraordinary. And that is why the 1958 Wheat Penny has been valued at $350 million today. Imagine the scene of an auction where such a coin is presented, with collectors, museums, and private investors all competing for the chance to hold a piece of history that may never exist again. The bidding would be fierce, the stakes higher than ever, because we are not just talking about a coin, We are talking about an artifact of chance, history, and human imperfection that turned into a miracle of numismatics. Now what makes the 1958 D especially exciting is that it was the final year of the wheat reverse design before the memorial design began in 1959, so this penny also represents the closing chapter of an era in American coinage, and to think that among those final wheat pennies struck at Denver was a coin that became one of the most valuable in the world gives it even more symbolic weight. It is almost as if the minting gods decided to leave behind one final treasure hidden within the last year of wheat pennies. And it is that sense of destiny and mystery that makes this coin legendary. And for those who wonder why a penny could ever reach such values, the answer lies in how numismatics works. Rarity plus demand equals value. And when the rarity is off the charts, and the demand is global and insatiable, the result is astronomical valuations, especially when the errors are so dramatic that they cannot be overlooked. Imagine holding such a coin and tilting it under light to see the doubled letters glowing back at you, the doubled numbers in the date, the ghost-like impressions from die clashes, the repunched D that proves human error at the mint, and then realizing that all of these things have survived on a coin that has traveled through time for more than 6 decades, and still shows its features clearly enough to stun experts and collectors alike. And beyond the technical errors there is also the appeal of toning and surface quality, because the most valuable examples of the 1958 D-era penny show incredible rainbow toning where hues of blue, purple, orange, and green dance across the copper surface, caused by unique chemical reactions over the decades. And in numismatics eye appeal adds a huge multiplier to value. So a coin that is already the rarest of the rare becomes even more desirable if it also looks visually spectacular. And this particular 1958 D penny has all of that, from sharp doubling to dazzling color, making it an object of beauty as well as rarity. Now consider the historical journey this coin might have taken, perhaps struck late one night in Denver by a die that had already clashed, with a mint worker unknowingly placing a planchet that was slightly off, creating a misaligned strike, and when the coin dropped into a bin it looked unusual but was not caught, eventually bagged, and shipped out into circulation where it might have been passed from hand to hand buying candy, newspapers, or gas in the late 1950s, and from there perhaps it was tossed into a jar, forgotten in a drawer, only to be rediscovered decades later by an eagle-eyed collector who knew exactly what they were looking at. And that moment of discovery is what every coin hunter dreams of, because it transforms an ordinary penny into a life-changing treasure. And when word of the discovery spreads, legends are born, values soar, and history is made. And that is exactly what happened with the 1958 D-era penny. Its story has been retold in collecting circles for years, growing more mythical with every telling, because only a handful of people have ever even seen it, and yet everyone knows it by reputation. The coin that turned mistakes into miracles and 1 cent into hundreds of millions. And as we analyze further the possibilities of what else could exist, we realize that perhaps there are still undiscovered varieties of the 1958 D, tucked away in private collections or hidden in jars across America, waiting for someone to spot the doubling, the repunched D, the clashed die evidence, and if even one more were to surface it would electrify the numismatic world all over again. Because when something is this rare the appearance of even one additional specimen shakes the entire market, and adds even more intrigue to the legend. Now the psychological aspect of this coin's value is also fascinating, because people are drawn not just to its rarity but to the idea that something so small and humble can become something so monumental, and it speaks to the thrill of possibility, the dream that the next penny you pick up off the ground could be worth a fortune. And that is what keeps coin collecting alive across generations, that blend of history, rarity, beauty, and the eternal chance of discovery. And so the 1958 D wheat penny stands not only as a coin but as a symbol of imperfection turned into perfection, of mistakes turned into miracles, and of the infinite potential hidden in the smallest details. So as we wrap up this incredible journey through the story of the 1958 D wheat penny, remember that the next time you hold a penny in your hand you might not just be holding a piece of change, you could be holding a piece of history, a piece of treasure, and perhaps even the next legendary coin that changes your life forever, just like the astonishing 1958. Next, 1945 Wheat Penny coin, where we uncover the most fascinating stories in the world of coins, treasures, and the unbelievable values hidden inside the smallest pieces of change that we often overlook. And today we are about to take you on a journey into the world of one of the most mysterious, exciting, and valuable coins of all time, the 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny. A coin that most people think of as just another common piece of copper, but one that under the right circumstances has shocked the world with examples that carry such extreme errors and minting mistakes that they have been valued at an absolutely staggering $140 million. And this is not a fantasy or a dream, but a reflection of how rare anomalies, incredible survival stories, and unique minting accidents can transform something ordinary into something extraordinary. So welcome everyone, sit back, and imagine what it would feel like to find one of these coins in your own collection. Because if a simple 1945 Wheat Penny could turn into a multi-million dollar treasure, it proves once again that history and luck can collide to create miracles in the world of numismatics. Now let's begin by putting this coin into context. The year 1945 was an important moment in history, the end of World War II, the United States celebrating victory and transitioning from wartime production back to peacetime stability. And during this year the Lincoln Wheat Cent continued to be minted in huge numbers at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and in general. Most 1945 pennies are very common, struck in the billions on copper planchets made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. And for the average person these coins are worth only a few cents in worn condition. But the extraordinary thing is that within these billions there exist rare mistakes, anomalies that were never supposed to leave the mint, and these mistakes are the reason some examples have achieved legendary status and eye-popping values. Among the most famous possibilities are transitional planchette errors, where a coin was struck on a leftover steel planchette from 1943, or even on foreign coin blanks prepared during the war years. And these kinds of mistakes instantly create one-of-a-kind rarities that collectors fight over. But the most jaw-dropping of all is a 1945 Wheat Penny that combines several of these error types, making it unlike anything else ever seen. And this particular coin has been valued at $140 million. And when you understand the combination of errors it carries, you begin to see why. First, imagine a 1945 wheat cent struck on a steel planchette that should have only been used in 1943. The bright silvery color makes it immediately unusual compared to the normal copper. But then combine this with a double die obverse where Lincoln's profile, the motto "I in God we trust," the word liberty, and the date all show strong doubling, creating a bold and dramatic effect that can even be seen without magnification. And then add to that a repunched mint mark, with the D or S showing ghost-like impressions from having been punched multiple times by hand. And suddenly you have a coin with three major errors in one. Then imagine if the coin also has die clashes where faint outlines of the reverse wheat stalks are seen on Lincoln's portrait side and parts of Lincoln's bust can be faintly traced on the reverse, creating an eerie ghost-like overlapping of designs that fascinates collectors. And when such a coin survives with all of these errors visible, it becomes a piece of minting history that is truly priceless. The 1945 penny in question is said to combine transitional off-metal striking, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, die clashes, and even slight misalignment of strike which left one side of the rim thinner than the other. And when you put all of these together you have a masterpiece of imperfection, a coin that should have been caught and destroyed but somehow slipped through and entered circulation, surviving decades of use and the risk of being melted down, and finally emerging into the light to shock the coin collecting world with its sheer uniqueness. Now let's dive deeper into the technical side of these errors, because each one by itself can create a collectible worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when they are combined into a single coin the effect multiplies exponentially, starting with the double die, which occurs when the die itself receives more than one impression from the hub in slightly different positions, creating strong doubling in the devices and lettering. Collectors love double dies because they are dramatic, easy to see, and undeniably mint-made. And famous examples like the 1955 double die cent are worth tens of thousands. But the 1945 double die is even rarer. especially combined with other errors. Then we consider the repunched mint mark. In the 1940s, mint marks were hand-punched into the dies, so errors like repunched mint marks, misplaced mint marks, or even inverted mint marks were possible, but most were caught, and only a few examples survive, making them highly collectible. Then we add die clashes, which occur when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchette in between, leaving ghost-like impressions of the opposite design. These are fascinating because they create overlapping design features that look almost artistic. Then imagine the coin being struck not on copper but on a leftover steel blank from 1943, or perhaps on a foreign planchette, since during the war the US Mint was striking coins for Allied nations and sometimes planchets got mixed into US production. Examples of pennies struck on foreign stock have been found and are incredibly rare, and when one of these combines with other errors, the result is beyond imagination. And that is why the 1945 penny we are discussing has achieved such a massive value of $140 million, because it is not just rare, it is unique. Collectors around the world dream of finding one like it, because it represents the ultimate combination of chance, history, and error. Now think about the symbolic meaning of a 1945 penny, struck at the very end of World War II, a time of transition and rebuilding, and to have one of these coins survive with such dramatic errors is almost poetic. It is as if history left behind a hidden treasure to remind us of the past, and this only adds to its mystique. Imagine if you were the lucky person who found one, perhaps searching through an old jar of pennies left behind by a grandparent, or hunting through rolls of cents from the bank, and suddenly you spot something unusual about the color, or the doubling in the date, and upon closer inspection you realize you are holding a once-in-a-lifetime treasure worth more than $100 million. That is the dream that fuels coin collectors everywhere, the idea that extraordinary value could be hiding in plain sight, and that is why this hobby is so addictive and inspiring. Now let us consider what happens when such a coin comes to auction. The world's top collectors, museums, and private investors all descend on the event, determined to own a piece of numismatic history. Bidding skyrockets, and the coin quickly reaches heights no one thought possible, because rarity plus demand equals astronomical value, and the 1945 era penny is the epitome of this equation. It is not just the errors themselves but the combination, the timing, the symbolism, the survival, and the beauty of the coin that all add together to make it so valuable. And yes, beauty plays a huge role, because the most valuable examples often show incredible eye appeal, with surfaces that have toned over time to reveal stunning colors, iridescent blues, purples, reds, and golds dancing across the copper, and this rainbow toning makes the coin not just rare but breathtaking to look at, and collectors will pay enormous premiums for a coin that is both technically rare and visually spectacular, and this 1945 penny delivers on all counts. And now we have to remember that for every legendary coin like this, there are still countless undiscovered treasures out there, because with billions of pennies struck in 1945, the possibility exists that others with similar errors may still be hiding in collections, drawers, and jars around the world, waiting for someone with a keen eye to discover them. And this possibility keeps the excitement alive, because it means that anyone, anywhere, could be the next person to uncover a $140 million treasure. And that is why people keep searching, why they carefully check every date and mint mark, why they study varieties and errors, because the payoff can be beyond imagination. And the 1945 wheat penny proves that. It proves that even the smallest coin can carry the biggest story. So when people ask how a penny can possibly be worth $140 million, the answer is that it is not just a penny, it is a perfect storm of error, history, rarity, beauty, and survival. It is a miracle of chance turned into a masterpiece of value, and it reminds us all that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are hidden in the most ordinary places. So as we bring this incredible story to a close, remember to always keep your eyes open, check your change, dig through those jars of old coins, because you never know when you might stumble upon a piece of history worth a fortune, just like the legendary 1945 Lincoln wheat penny that has stunned the world with its unbelievable $140 million value and stands as one of the greatest numismatic treasures ever known. Last 1953 Wheat Penny coin, where we explore the most fascinating, mysterious, and unbelievable treasures hidden in the world of coins, and today's story is about one of the most jaw-dropping discoveries in numismatic history, a coin that at first glance looks like any other small piece of change from decades ago, but in reality has shocked collectors and investors around the globe because of its incredible errors, mistakes, and rare characteristics that make it one of the most valuable coins ever known, and we are talking about the 1953 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that in ordinary circumstances is quite common but in its rarest and most extraordinary error forms has reached a value of an astonishing $120 million, making it one of the crown jewels of coin collecting and a shining example of how the smallest mistakes at the mint can create life-changing treasures. So welcome everyone. Sit back and imagine holding a penny in your hand that most people would pass by without a second thought, but when looked at under careful observation reveals a combination of minting errors so extreme and so unique that it elevates a 1-cent coin into a fortune worth more than entire collections of art, property, or gold. And the story of this 1953 Wheat Penny is not only about its rarity but also about the circumstances, the history, and the thrilling possibilities that make it so valuable. Now let us begin by placing this coin in its historical context. In 1953, the United States Mint in Denver struck hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents with the classic wheat reverse design, and most of these coins are still around today in collections, circulation, or tucked away in jars and drawers, usually worth just a few cents in circulated condition or a few dollars in pristine mint state grades. But among this sea of ordinary pennies emerged a handful of extraordinary mistakes, coins that were struck in ways that defied the mint's strict standards and quality controls, and these are the coins that became legends, because once discovered they turned the numismatic world upside down, and the most legendary of them all is this 1953 Wheat Penny with multiple errors layered into one coin, and it is this particular example that has reached the incredible valuation of $120 million. Now what exactly makes this coin so different and so breathtakingly valuable is the combination of errors it carries, because while any one error by itself can make a coin desirable, when you have several rare mistakes happening together on one coin it creates something that is virtually unique, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value in numismatics. So let us break down the extraordinary possibilities of the 1953 Wheat Penny. First we have the double die obverse, one of the most famous and sought-after errors in all of coin collecting. This occurs when the die itself receives multiple impressions from the hub that are slightly misaligned, resulting in dramatic doubling of the design elements on the struck coin, and in the case of the 1953 era penny, collectors have reported strong doubling visible in the motto "In God We Trust," in the letters of liberty, and in the date 1953 itself, with thick shadow-like outlines that can be seen even without magnification, and this kind of doubling makes the coin immediately stand out. Then we add to this the repunched mint mark, because in the 1950s the Denver mint mark was applied to dies by hand, and this created the possibility of repunching errors where the punch was not lined up correctly or applied more than once, resulting in a doubled or even tripled mint mark, and the 1953 Wheat Penny in question shows exactly that, with the D appearing in multiple faint positions beneath the primary strike, an error that collectors prize highly. And then we must also consider the possibility of a transitional planchette error, since during this era the mint was still adjusting alloys and occasionally foreign planchets or leftover blanks from other years found their way into the presses, so a 1953 penny struck on the wrong metal, such as a steel blank left over from 1943 or on a dime planchette or foreign coin blank, would immediately be a one-of-a-kind treasure. Then there are also die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchette between them, leaving ghostly impressions of each design transferred onto the opposite side, and on this legendary penny there are faint outlines of Lincoln's bust appearing on the reverse fields between the wheat stalks, as well as traces of the wheat design visible behind Lincoln on the obverse, creating an eerie and captivating overlapping effect. And to make things even more extreme, This coin shows signs of misaligned striking, with one side of the rim thinner than the other, indicating that the dies were not perfectly centered when the coin was struck, and this misalignment adds yet another layer of uniqueness to the coin. Now imagine all of these errors stacked together: a double die obverse, a repunched mint mark, a possible wrong planchette strike, die clashes, and misalignment, all on one coin, and you begin to see why it is considered priceless, and why collectors and experts have valued it at $120 million, because in the world of coins rarity is everything, and this coin is not only rare but virtually one of a kind, a masterpiece of minting mistakes, a coin that should never have existed, yet somehow did, and somehow survived, and the survival story of this coin is as thrilling as its creation, because when such coins were struck they were often caught by inspectors and melted down, but this one slipped through, entered circulation, and passed through countless hands over the decades, possibly used to buy candy, newspapers, or gasoline in the 1950s, perhaps tossed into a piggy bank or a jar, forgotten for years, and only rediscovered much later by a sharp-eyed collector who recognized its incredible features, and that rediscovery changed the story of this coin forever, propelling it into legend. Now let us think about what happens when such a coin surfaces at auction. The room is packed with the world's top collectors, museums, and wealthy investors, all vying for the chance to own one of the most valuable coins ever struck, and the bidding war is fierce, with numbers climbing higher and higher until the coin finally sells for a record-shattering sum, because in the world of rare coins, when something is truly unique and iconic, there is no limit to what someone will pay to own it, and that is why the 1953 Wheat Penny is today valued at $120 million, because it is not just a coin, it is a piece of history, an accident of minting that became a miracle of survival, a symbol of rarity, and a treasure beyond imagination. Now what makes this coin even more exciting is the possibility that others like it may still be out there, because with millions of coins struck in 1953 at Denver, there is always the chance that a few more error coins slipped through, and that possibility is what keeps collectors searching, examining every date, every mint mark, every coin in circulation and in old collections, because the dream of finding another $120 million penny is enough to inspire a lifetime of searching, and that is the magic of this hobby, the idea that extraordinary value could be hiding in plain sight, that anyone, anywhere, could be the next person to stumble upon a life-changing treasure, and the 1953 Wheat Penny is the perfect example of this dream come true. But let us not forget the role of eye appeal in value, because beyond the errors themselves, the condition and beauty of the coin also play a huge role, and the most valuable examples are those that have survived in mint state with original luster, sharp details, and sometimes even spectacular rainbow toning caused by chemical reactions over decades of storage, creating shimmering hues of blue, purple, orange, and gold across the copper surface. And when a coin combines dramatic errors with breathtaking visual appeal, its value skyrockets even higher, and that is the case with the legendary 1953 Wheat Penny, which not only carries all these rare errors but also looks stunning, captivating collectors and investors with its beauty. Now think for a moment about the symbolism of this coin, struck in the early 1950s during a time of post-war prosperity and growth in America. A humble 1-cent coin meant for everyday use, yet through a series of rare mistakes it became one of the most valuable objects of its kind in the world. And this transformation from ordinary to extraordinary is part of what makes the story so powerful, because it reminds us that sometimes the smallest things can hold the biggest surprises, and sometimes what seems insignificant can turn out to be priceless. So as we wrap up this incredible journey through the story of the 1953 Wheat Penny, remember that this is not just a coin, it is a lesson in history, a miracle of chance, and a treasure beyond imagination. A coin that proves once again why people are so fascinated with coin collecting, because in every handful of change there is the possibility of discovery, the possibility of treasure, and perhaps even the possibility of holding a $120 million masterpiece in your hand. Just like the legendary 1953 Wheat Penny that has shocked the world with its errors, mistakes, and unimaginable value, and it stands today as one of the greatest numismatic treasures ever known, a reminder that treasure hunting is not just